Well, good afternoon, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started with today's webinar. My name is Andy Krellis. I'm the Director of Federal and International Affairs at the Council of State Governments based in our Washington, D.C. office. I also have the opportunity to serve as the Executive Director for the State International Development Organizations, or SITO, which is an affiliate of the Council of State Governments. Together, CSG and SITO work to represent state international trade offices to ensure they have the resources to attract investment into their respective state. We have a lot to get to in the next hour. We have three great speakers who will discuss opportunities and resources to attract investment in their states. Here's a look at today's agenda. First, we'll hear from Mary Waters, the Deputy Commissioner of International Trade for the state of Georgia. Mary will provide an overview of the economic impact of investments in Georgia and how they work to attract investment. She will also discuss how they work with federal partners to efficiently secure new investments. Then we'll hear from David Campbell from SelectUSA within the U.S. Department of Commerce. David will provide a snapshot of the federal government's role in helping states attract investment. After David, we'll hear from Peter Joseph, the Executive Director of Invest in the USA Association. Peter will highlight some other tools state and local governments can use to attract investment, including the EB-5 program. After that, we'll have our presenters respond to your comments and questions. If you have any questions for our presenters, you can type it into the GoToWebinar interface at any time. We will collate those here, and I'll ask as many as we have time at the end of the webcast. With that, I want to transition to our first guest now. As I mentioned, Mary Waters is the Deputy Commissioner of International Trade for the state of Georgia and a SITO board member. Mary also serves as a member of the newly created State Federal Trade Promotion Working Group, which aims to improve the coordination between state and federal agencies. She is on the front line working to attract companies to invest in Georgia. Thank you again, and I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Well, thank you, Andy, and good afternoon, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be with you. So my day job is really to oversee the International Trade Division for the state of Georgia, but we know that trade and investment are very closely related, and that international trade leads to investment and vice versa. And it's really important to have clear lines of communication and to really engage partners that can help all of our international efforts be successful. And so that's really what I want to dive into today. So next slide, please. So just before I dive into my remarks, I just wanted to give you a bit of an update on my department. So I work for the Georgia Department of Economic Development. We are a state agency here in the state of Georgia. We report to the governor's office. But really our mission is all about strategically delivering economic development. And we do take a very broad-based approach to our economic development initiatives. There are 8 different divisions within our department that are focused on bringing economic development, jobs, investment, and existing industry expansions across the state. And so within our department, we focus on bringing new business in, helping existing industries expand, identifying new sales markets for Georgia products and services, making sure that our workforce talent is ready and able to meet the needs of the jobs that we have coming in. We're constantly attracting additional tourists to come to Georgia, international students to come to Georgia, and promoting ourselves as a film and digital entertainment hub as well. So we take a very broad-based approach to our economic development initiatives. And again, we rely very heavily on statewide partnerships to help us be successful in that mission. Next slide, please. So I just want to set the stage talking about our international investment attraction here in the state. Georgia is very fortunate in that we have excellent global connectivity and global accessibility that really it sets the table for us to be able to do even more in terms of promoting trade and attracting international investment into our state. Having the logistical and transportation assets that we do, the world's most traveled airport, the nation's 4th busiest and fastest growing container port, an extensive rail system. Businesses that come to Georgia and tourists that come to Georgia, they can access about 80% of the U.S. market in a 2-hour flight or a 2-day truck haul from Georgia. So that really tells a very compelling international story, and especially for international investors, to understand that if they come and they locate here, they have great access to the entire domestic U.S. market from a landing pad here in Georgia. And so this global connectivity, it really is the baseline that allows us to tell a great story, to get on the radar of international investors. And we know that that's critically important for our state. Foreign direct investments typically create more jobs per project than domestic investments typically, and they tend to have a higher dollar value in terms of that dollar value of investment into our state. And so we definitely proactively approach foreign direct investment as we would as part of a broader strategy in terms of our overall investment attraction. Next slide, please. So what does this look like for Georgia? We have approximately 3,000 international facilities in our state, and that represents investments by about 50 different nations. And that is also connected, in addition to our global connectivity, we also have a very strong international business community, a strong consular community. We have nearly 70 countries represented by consulates, binational chambers, honorary consulates, and trade offices. And so again, that creates a very rich international ecosystem with which to work, but then it also helps us expand our reach as we're reaching out to international investors. So how we approach our foreign direct investment, here in our team, we have industry groups. So we have a project management team that focuses on advanced manufacturing. We have another that focuses on logistics, energy and environmental, and food processing projects. We have a third group that focuses on life science, healthcare, and headquarters opportunities. And then we have a fully dedicated international investment team that works full-time in helping potential international investors come to Georgia. These project managers, they are really cross-cultural. They speak another language. Many of them have experiences living and working abroad. And so they have a very strong familiarity both with the Georgia business community and a foreign market. And that really helps facilitate our investment attraction efforts because it's important to be cross-cultural. We understand that international investors, they have different needs than a domestic investor might, and being able to adequately speak their language and understand the business culture that they're coming from can really be an asset in trying to expand investment across our state. So next slide, please. So in addition to a team of an international investment project team, the state of Georgia is also very fortunate to have a robust network of international representation all across the globe. We have 12 offices in 11 strategic markets, and so these representatives, they work a combination of both trade and investment. But from a foreign direct investment standpoint, these representatives are responsible for lead generation, proactively going out and identifying companies that may be in the right position to look at expanding their operations into the United States. These representatives also can call on companies that already have existing investments in the state of Georgia, and we find a lot of value in following up and making sure that we have strong service after the sale for our existing international investors. And so these international representatives are really our boots on the ground, and we have found that having a local point of contact with potential investors in market really can make all the difference. To have a local face in the foreign market really can make companies feel much more comfortable about their investment decisions. Next slide, please. So just to give you an idea of some of the trends that we're seeing from a statewide perspective, the state has had representation in both Japan and Europe continuously since 1973, and so we do have very strong linkages for both Japanese and European investment into our state. But in terms of number of jobs, our top investor nations are Japan, Germany, the UK, Canada, which is also Georgia's largest export partner, and the Netherlands. So we are seeing a lot of trends related to automotive. We're seeing some reshoring of manufacturing operations. We're seeing a lot of logistics activities and a lot of headquarters projects coming in. And in fiscal year 2016, about 23% of all of the investment projects that we helped assist, about 23% were international projects, and so that's a really strong number for us, and it really goes to underscore that our international investors, they're offering good quality, high-paying jobs for Georgians, and we see a very strong nexus between international investment and job and investment growth all across our state. So these are our trends that we're really very proud of. Next slide, please. So I just want to spend a little bit of time talking about partnerships before turning it over to the next speaker, because for us in Georgia, whether we're talking about trade development or strengthening our workforce resources and our workforce assets, or getting more tourists to Georgia, we cannot do what we do without partnerships. That's true across the board, and that is particularly true when we're talking about attracting FDI. We rely very, very heavily on our utility partners. We work very closely with sister state agencies like the Department of Community Affairs, the University System of Georgia, the Technical College System of Georgia, to make sure that we're all speaking with one voice about the assets and the opportunities that investing in the U.S. brings. And so one really crucial partner for us is the federal government, and I know you'll be hearing later about SelectUSA. I can just say as an unprompted testimonial, the SelectUSA program, working with our federal partners, that has really yielded many benefits for us as a state. Georgia is very proactive on its own, but it's very helpful to work closely with our federal partners that are also doing their due diligence and a lot of legwork to bring qualified investors to the table and to get that international investment into the United States. And so whether we're working in tandem with SelectUSA's international roadshows or whether we're attending the annual summit in Washington, D.C., the work that SelectUSA does to really bring high-quality, dedicated potential investors to the table to give states like Georgia and our neighboring states an opportunity to put ourselves on the map and show these investors what we've got and why they should consider investing in our states. That is really incredibly helpful for us to continue to do what we do. And so I think the same kind of coordination and collaboration that we're pursuing on the trade side really does segue into everything that we're doing in terms of international investment attraction, understanding the role of the states, understanding the role of federal partners and local partners, and really seeing how we can work more closely together to create those win-win situations to bring more international investment to the U.S. And across our states. So I hope that was a useful overview of how Georgia approaches international investment. I would be happy to answer any questions that anyone might have about our approach to FDI. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mary. That was a great overview and presentation of how Georgia works to attract investment, and a perfect segue to our next panelist. And just a quick reminder, if anybody has questions, please save them for the end of the webcast. Again, you can enter them into the GoToWebinar interface at any time. Now we'll transition to David Campbell. David is with SelectUSA. He will provide an overview of how the federal government works in close collaboration with the states to help attract investment. SelectUSA's mission is to facilitate job-creating business investment into the United States and to raise the awareness of the role of investment plays in the U.S. economy. It's been an exciting couple of months in Washington with the new administration in Congress, and we're looking forward to hearing more about SelectUSA and your work with the states. David, thank you again for joining us.
Great. Thank you, Andy. Thanks to Saito. Appreciate the opportunity. Very much appreciate the kind comments that Mary, State of Georgia, had to say about our program. We work very hard to have states and other EDOs feel that way. I've got 19 slides. I've got 15 minutes. My goal is to only use 10, and maybe we'll reserve more time for questions and comments, and I can always elaborate on things that I may have gone over too quickly. Next slide, please. Okay, I've got, I think the numbering got a little, I think these are 10 key messages. I'm not going to read all of them. You've heard what we do. I want to focus on, I guess, the third from the top. We serve 2 clients, folks like you on the phone at all levels, state, county, municipal, regional, also the U.S. federal territories, the EDO community in shorthand, and number 2, we also work with potential investors. We view our work broadly. We always defer to the states in terms of relationship. We're very conscious and scrupulous about the division of federal state authority in the constitutional matters, but we're always willing to talk and work with anyone who's got any skin in the game in terms of economic development, and that's something we always counsel our EDOs, and I'll get to that slide, which is to think broadly about anyone and everyone who has a stake in your economy or should have a stake, and you can always narrow it down to the folks that get paid to do the economic development work, etc. What we're doing with EDOs is we're helping to incorporate foreign direct investment, global business investment, FDI shorthand, into your comprehensive economic development strategy. SEDS, if you don't have one, that's the first step, and then we can help you make sure a slab of that pie of that strategy includes FDI. The next point, we connect EDOs to potential investors both in market, so target markets overseas, you let us know where those are, and we also have services that bring folks in called reverse missions, so would-be investors visiting U.S. locations in the United States. Our services to EDOs and companies are free with the exception of in-market programs, which are cost recovery, and some of our events, including our signature annual summit this June 18, 19, 20 at National Harbor, Maryland, have a fee, which I think is fairly typical for events of that caliber and quality. We're very confident in the data. The third-party data strongly suggests and supports that FDI is important contributor to the national U.S. economy in all 50 states and the territories. And it's also important to the thousands of economies where the foreign investors are located in creating the jobs. For instance, some of the things that Mary talked about on behalf of the state of Georgia. Finally, the U.S. open to businesses of all sizes and all sectors with very, very few restraints. We know this. The U.S. market is much more open than virtually any other leading market in the world. And you can always contact your portfolio manager for assistance. We divided the world into 2. We've got domestic portfolios, so our work with states and regions and federal territories, and then the rest of the world are foreign markets. Next slide, please. This is who we are. You've heard about that. I'm going to go to the next slide, please. I wanted to emphasize when you call SelectUSA, we're still very small and nimble. We like to be market-facing. We work very hard, but you effectively get a much larger family, not only within the Department of Commerce, both our colleagues in the domestic field, the so-called U.S. Export Assistance Centers, the USIAC for short, but also our foreign commercial service officers and overseas at roughly 80 U.S. embassies and consulates. And that's a pretty big family, but then the better news is through the Interagency Investment Working Group, the IIWG, we've had access to some 20 further federal bureaus, departments, and agencies that also have some role to play in economic development and stimulating commerce, trade, and investment, and we've got great relationships with many of those folks as well. Next slide. I mentioned some of the stats. There are a lot of stats as to how FDI benefits not only the national economy, but also the local communities. And I hope that some of you on the phone call can testify to that in terms of where you're located at the state or local level. but here are some of the facts, and I think you'll get the entire deck for your reference, so I'll go past this slide quickly too. Next slide, please. Global trends. The United States continues to be by far the largest recipient of all cumulative foreign direct investment. The total stock, the term of art is stock. That's like your current bank account balance is 3.1 trillion. And the flow for 2015, the latest year for which we have the data, that's like the transactions you did in your bank account during the year of 2015 was 350 billion. Down below is a source that we pay for, a part of the Financial Times that tracks publicly announced transactions, so it's going to be a conservative number. Some deals won't get announced for some reason, and some deals may escape their capture, but this is the best service we've found. They're talking about from January 2003, when the service opened, to essentially last month, some 20,000 publicly announced FDI transactions that created almost 2 million jobs, and you can see the average size. That's just math that's going on there. The average capital, the total capital investment, 800 billion, and project size. Again, these are conservative numbers, but when we talk to EDOs and they ask for specifics, what's coming into my city, my town, my region, this is one of the database of several that we can access for some of that transaction level detail. Next slide, please. The point here is to show you in broad geographic terms, not hemispheres, but close, where the FDI is coming from. Europe remains with far gap still the lion's share of the foreign direct investment in the United States. Some of the European contributors, despite a large base, continue to grow quite robustly. However, most of the fastest growing sources of investment, and that's the next slide, are coming from Asia, Pacific, and Western Hemisphere, but the lion's share is still Western Hemisphere. And here's the next slide. The left column in blue are the largest sources, United Kingdom, Japan, Canada, and the right column, the right chart in red are the ones that are growing more fast. You see, for instance, Japan is growing rapidly. Some of the other larger economies, Switzerland's fallen off the list, but used to be in the top 10, both in terms of overall size and growing fast. That gives you a snapshot where the main dollars have come from historically and where the new dollars are coming from today and tomorrow. Next slide, please. Okay, this slide carves FDI by sector, several broad sectors, and the green circle indicates that manufacturing at almost 40% of all FDI is the lion's share of the FDI pie, so to speak. Doesn't mean FDI isn't important in growing in other sectors, but manufacturing remains a very dominant role for FDI, which is why SelectUSA goes to events like the Hanover Messe, where we'll be in 2 weeks in Hanover, Germany for the week, to try and gather even more advanced manufacturing that's good paying jobs. It's dynamic growing industries for U.S. communities and states. Next slide, please. A lot of reasons to invest in the United States. I'll go over that one. That's more for a foreign audience. Next slide, please. Okay, I want to take a second here. This is coming from the same source that I referenced in terms of the transaction level detail. FDA markets are part of the Financial Times. The red box is I want to underscore that the main reason remains the single market. Access to the single market remains the biggest motivation and reason for folks to invest in the United States. However, I also will say that growing is the rationale to be an export to the rest of the world, where 95% of the consumers live. So, for instance, BMW, once again, for I think the 5th out of 7 years in a row, is the largest exporter by value of automobiles manufactured and produced in the United States. And we know that BMW, unlike other companies like, say, Ford and so forth, or Fiat, is not a mass producer of automobiles. So I think that really speaks volumes to both the degree to which BMW has invested in this market, certainly for access to the American market, but also, as mentioned, also for access to export markets. So the red circle is indicating that proximity to customers and suppliers in the market are still leading rationales to invest. In terms of incentives, since we have this group on the call, incentives is sort of like when you meet someone at a cocktail party and quickly you talk about sports or maybe the weather. It might be important to the conversation, but as a way to just kind of get into some kind of a rapport with the other person with whom you're speaking. Incentives often are the tipping point for finalists. I talk about cakes and icing. That's the icing on the cake. The folks that are the finalists have made the cake. Those are the core business criteria. The reason I mention this is oftentimes smaller states or EDOs will ask us, will say, we're concerned that we don't have enough generous subsidies to compete with larger states or deeper pocketed states, and I say you should be as thoughtful and as generous as you can be. However, if you don't make the ingredients, if you don't have the ingredients to make that cake, you might get one investor who has dollar signs in their eyes and they get a bit giddy. But if you don't have the workforce, the tax, the logistics, the transport, a lot of the things that Mary showed you for Georgia, You're not going to compete in the longer term, and you won't be a finalist, for which then it may turn on incentives. So incentives are certainly important, but when companies are asked, why did you invest, it's like number 8, 9, 10, or 11 in terms of the ranking of priorities. Next slide. Okay, I want to focus the most of my remaining time here on these slides. I guess I'm already coming up on 9 or 10 minutes. So information, our services for EDOs, top line, information research counseling, next, connections, below that, in-market promotional programs, reverse missions, that's where companies are coming to the United States, advocacy and ombudsman. Advocacy is where one single U.S. location has been identified as competing against one or more foreign locations for that would-be investor. We are geographically neutral as a federal agency. We are for all 50 states and the territories equally. We cannot cherry pick. And I know that can be frustrating for folks who would like to get lead generation the way you typically can do it yourself or through a hired consultant. But we've got one U.S. location against the rest of the world. We're all in. And we've got some examples where we even got the White House involved in a transaction and helped seal the deal on behalf of the U.S. location that was at issue. Ombudsman is a very generic term for a service where we answer all kinds of federal questions. And I've got the next, when we get to the next slide, we'll see some examples of that. But in a nutshell, these are the suite of services that we're providing to EDOs, often starting with the FDI creation, attraction, retention strategy. If you have the SEDS, then the next question is, do you have a plan to attract investment? If you don't have that, we'll have a conversation. I'll share data. I'll share trends. I'll ask questions. You'll answer them. And we'll come up with something that makes sense for your jurisdiction. Next slide. Okay. Just a thumbnail. We've done a lot more than this, but in a short phone call and a short slide deck, wanted to give you some examples of what we've helped do for state, local, regional, and federal territory EDOs. Top line, we've helped discuss, helped review, helped create new investment attraction plans. Second line, as part of the top line, we've discussed FDI target markets and target sectors. You should know from where you want your investment and from which sectors, and we can help talk about that and refine that. And then we've answered a variety, a litany of federal questions, memos, reports, conference calls, all the above. Just a couple of examples. The first word is always the U.S. agency or department with whom you were speaking, and then a thumbnail as to what the issue or the topic might have been. The bottom below that in the bigger font again, we're at conferences. We're often invited at the statewide annual events or the spring and fall events to speak. We're very happy to do that. We've hosted roadshows and single location promotions. A roadshow is where multiple U.S. EDOs travel to foreign markets that they have common interest in, and they pitch themselves to would-be investors. Single location promotion is the same exercise, but just one U.S. jurisdiction, so only one U.S. EDO on the dance card, so to speak. We've done these reverse missions, which is the second to the bottom line, and then the final bullet, we've engaged, as I mentioned, advocacy when it's us versus some other part of the world, and we've got examples from Puerto Rico and Texas. Next slide, please. Okay. Saito Andy wanted me to do some thinking about how state legislators could get involved, and I came up with 10 points. Very quick mention, can go into more detail at another time. Every state's a little bit different, so some of these are a bit generic. You should take and pick and choose based on how your state is set up in terms of funding and authorization and hierarchy and leadership. But I would say fundamentally it's helpful for state legislators to get to understand what FDI is, what it looks like, what it can look like, where it's located in your state, the contribution it's making to the state. Someone like Mary Waters would be an excellent expert, obviously, to inform her colleagues in the legislature in the state of Georgia. I would encourage state and local politicians and elected officials to tour these businesses, these facilities, these operations, these factories. Get involved in groundbreaking ceremonies where possible. Ensure that FDI, number 4, is part of your economic development discussion. Understand the needs and expectations of global investors. Often they are similar to what your domestic constituents would want, your domestic companies, but there may be some nuances. And then the rest of these is being as generous as possible with again, if applicable, funding and supporting EDO programs, including travel. It's very difficult to land investments without actually going overseas. Yes, you can do phone, webinar like today and so forth, and email, but really not much beats meeting investors face-to-face. But I would defer to someone like Mary to talk about that. I would also say that when governors and mayors and legislators and assembly folks are going overseas, try and include investment and related topics on your program to get that snippet in there, along with whatever else you want to talk about. I mentioned being thoughtful and generous with incentives, which is number 9. And finally, number 10, please contact if we can ever be of assistance. And we'll start going through the rest of these slides pretty quick. I'm coming up with my time. So next slide, please. I'm going to keep on going, please. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, no, that one's go back, sorry. So I'll make two final comments. I'm coming up on 15 minutes. One is another plug for our annual signature summit, June 18, 19, 20. There's the website, there's the URL, and investment registration is going live. Next slide, please. I'm happy to apologize for some of the cut and paste. I'm happy to say that all the states with a color other than gray or light blue have signed up at the state level, so the state level EDO. If there's anyone on the phone from Hawaii, Nevada, I'm sorry, I have the list here, let's see. Maine, Arkansas, Hawaii, Nevada, Wyoming, Puerto Rico, or Alaska, those states, Puerto Rico, of course, the territory, have not signed up. Happy to discuss if anyone on the phone call is from those states, what we might do to try and nudge someone at the state or local level to sign up. And then the final slide, please, are our portfolios. I did not list the 50 states. It's too much text, but there's a URL at the bottom of the slide. The red box in red are the 14 folks we have overseas, locally engaged staff, LES, who work full-time on inward investment for SelectUSA. And the left box in blue, you see in a thumbnail where we're representing the largest markets in the world. With that, thank you very much. Open any comments or questions.
Well, great. Thank you, David. I know many states and EDOs are looking forward to the 2017 SelectUSA Summit coming up this summer. Again, if you have any questions, please save them for the end of the webcast. You can enter them into the GoToWebinar interface at any time. And moving to our final presenter, Mr. Peter Joseph, the Executive Director of Investment in the USA. Invest in the USA is a trade association for the EB5 program. We're looking forward to hearing from Peter on other resources and tools for states to attract investment. Peter, thank you again for joining us, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Andy, and thanks to Saito for having me here. And I really enjoyed these previous two presenters, and have had the pleasure of working closely with SelectUSA as they've been such able representatives of the U.S. as a destination for foreign direct investment. And I'm hoping that to end this, we can provide some information on a more practical level on a particular program that I'm sure either you all have hopefully heard of or have even worked on in the past. And I think it's a good example of how there are a lot of resources out there to make sure the economic development toolbox that you all are working with is as full as it should be with all the tools needed to make things happen in your communities. We all know it takes quite a bit of creativity and perseverance to get capital stacks together to get projects funded and pushing ahead and meeting the local economic development goals and community development goals of our states and other local communities. And so the EB5 program has been an example of an emerging economic development tool in the post-recession economy that we all live in here today. And so that's what I will focus on here. And just before I get into some of these slides, EB5, it stands for employment-based fifth. It's part of the U.S. immigration system generally. It's less than 1% of the visas that are issued annually are to immigrant investors who invest through the EB5 program. They have to invest either $500,000 or $1 million into a job-creating project that will create or save 10 American jobs per EB5 investor. And I'll hit on quite a bit of what the heck that looks like in practice in the slides ahead. But just to give you a sense, this has really been a maybe I'm not in control here to move this forward. There we go. And hopefully someone can chat me and tell me where I'm being technically deficient here. So IIUSA, that stands for Invest in the USA. We've been around since 2005, and we have a national membership. It is national membership under our 501c6 nonprofit trade association status, and our primary mission is to make this program, the EB5 Regional Center program, that has really emerged as a source of foreign direct investment to the tune of over $1 billion a quarter in the last couple of years, it becomes a permanent part of the economic development toolbox here in the U.S. And countries all around the world have these immigrant investor programs. There's more liquidity and more globally thinking foreign investors, as you've heard here today. than there ever have been before, and the U.S. continues to be the #1 destination for foreign direct investment. And in the immigrant investor context, it's no different. It's a different source and a different incentive. But at the end of the day, from a more macro perspective, it's really not. It's the same thing. And with the credit crunch that emerged after the financial crisis and the need to diversify sources of financing earlier on in the economic development process, EB-5 has really become an important source of capital for communities and for a diverse set of industries across the country. There we go. So our membership base, and this is a good example of resources that are available to you all as state governments to make sense of how do you get your communities and states in position to access the EB-5 capital markets to do good things in your communities. And IIUSA is an excellent resource. I might be a little biased, but I hope you'll agree when you come and visit our website. So we represent over 440 EB-5 stakeholders. EB-5 regional centers are essentially regional economic development regional economic development entities that channel foreign direct investment into certain kinds of projects within a regional economy. And so regional centers are headquartered across the country, but often serve geographic areas that are not necessarily where their offices are, as they develop broader portfolios around the country to deliver EB-5 capital to. But those are really our core members, the EB-5 regional centers. And I know you've heard a few terms of art here today, and this is certainly one. But it's important to also note that regional centers are approved by the federal government to take on these economic development and financial activities. But it varies quite a bit whether they are privately owned, some sort of public-private partnership arrangement, or even publicly owned in some publicly owned and administered in some circumstances. We've seen success and failure in all of the different permutations that really all points back to due diligence and knowing exactly what it is your state is trying to do with your actual your broader economic development plans, and see how EB-5 can fit into that in the variety of ways one can do so. And so $17 billion has come in through the EB-5 program to the U.S. since 2008. And as I mentioned, I think just right at the beginning, the last couple of years it's been just over $1 billion a quarter, and that doesn't show any signs at this time of slowing down. This map is on our website. It will give you a sense of whether there are regional centers already in your state and what kind of activities they've already been up to, what kind of economic development projects they're approved to do. And it's a resource that hopefully allows you to much more efficiently start to get a sense of what's in your area, what's in your state, that you can start to make sense of and see how you can fit it into your economic development plans. And we interact with state governments quite a bit on exactly that, how to make sense of what information is available and who might make sense to get in touch with, given what your economic development policies are at a local level. So you can really, gosh, you got to love a good graph. I could just sit here in silence for the next couple of minutes, and it would probably say everything I need to say, but I won't put you through that. 2008, you can really see how this program began a real upward trend in 2008 that has not really slowed down. We actually have some more recent numbers that just came in that keep that level up closer to the 4.3 number for each year. Fiscal year 2016 being behind us now, and we actually just received Q2 of this fiscal year, so the Q1 of 2017 calendar year, and similar to the last, I believe it's 8 or 9 quarters straight now, over $1 billion, well over $1 billion came in through EB-5. And so there are two different kinds of EB5, generally speaking, foreign investors, immigrant investors who are looking to migrate by their investment, by some sort of investment program. And again, there are so many of these around the world. In the U.S., we have regional centers that essentially are fund managers and economic development entities that investors can pool their funds towards the job creation metric and use economic modeling to demonstrate and predict the economic impact in an area as a means of proving the 10 jobs per investor that are required for the investors to qualify for the program. The direct program is quite a bit different. The investor has to actually invest in and operate the business themselves directly and hire directly 10 workers with the same required investment amounts, either $500,000 or $1 million. And the $500,000 is for economically distressed areas known as targeted employment areas, areas of high unemployment or rural areas. As you can see here, regional centers are by far the more popular investment vehicle for an EB5 visa, to the tune of about 95%. But these numbers actually come from a recent Department of Commerce study that was done based on a pretty large sample of investment petitions that have come in I believe in 2013, and it also shows that EB5 investors, aside from their initial investment in entities that are actually going to create American jobs for the purposes of EB5, they also create jobs from moving here and buying durable goods and professional services and all the good things that come with it. They pay taxes on their worldwide income and so on and so on. So 16 jobs per investor is not so bad. Anyone who looks at our guaranteed expenditures going forward as a country, we need a younger and more liquid population in order to be able to pay for Social Security and Medicare and the like going forward. And this is one means of many that are going to be necessary to achieve that. There we go. I'm going to skip this slide. I just wanted to have this in there as a resource. This shows you the process that an EB5 investor goes through from an immigration standpoint, in particular, on to qualify for a permanent green card. Initially, they get a conditional green card, and the conditions are removed only after they demonstrate that their investment created the requisite jobs. There we go. So this is another resource page, but I'll just reiterate that regional centers come in all shapes and sizes. You'll want to do your homework, do your due diligence on who has a track record, not only in EB5, but also in whatever kinds of industries or projects they are, industries and projects they are funding. They can be terminated by the Department of Homeland Security and its agency, the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. And it costs quite a bit to set up and time, in addition to maintenance costs with annual reporting, et cetera. There are also over almost 800 of these right now. As I mentioned earlier, we have membership that's over 260, but that makes up well over 90% of EB5 funds that are flowing through into the U.S. And that gives you a sense that track record means quite a bit, and we can be helpful, and our website can be very helpful in demonstrating to you where you might find track record worth your time for outreach. And so here's a nice pie chart as well that shows you what the distribution has looked like in 2015 for types of projects funded through EB5. Really this is a story of commercial real estate in the downturn after the financial crisis and during the financial crisis, really building a capital market as EB5 became such an important source of financing for projects across the country. That has really diversified, as you can see here. And some of the trends that we're seeing in terms of where there's growth and project type are probably not going to be any surprise to you. The redevelopment of places like Navy Yards and other areas that need a lot of upfront investment, maybe remediation or something of the sort to get land ready for going vertical on some kind of new development. Another is infrastructure. Quite a bit of quite a few different models that we've seen folks putting to use for EB5 to fund infrastructure, but it's an exciting new trend, and of course we're eager to see how EB5 can fit into any efforts for infrastructure legislation and programming, pushing ahead with such a strong history in this country of importing foreign capital of some kind for a lot of the sort of leaps forward that we've gone through technologically, and I certainly hope we can collectively figure out good ways for EB5 to make your jobs easier in inducing the capital formation you're going to need to get the infrastructure done that really is required for this next round of or this next century. Let's see. So where are all these investors coming from? I've shown you there's all this growth of funds heading towards the U.S., mostly from China. Other countries you can see are not anywhere close to how China has become the predominant source. It was South Korea just before 2009 when China became the predominant source, and it's only had a larger market share as the years have gone on. But we are seeing examples of that starting to change with countries like Vietnam and some Central and South American countries, including Mexico and India and many more. But it's certainly a China-dominated market, and one that I think is a good example of how we need to find good ways to channel this demand for capital to be exported out of these countries that might be experiencing uncertainty or might be just hedging their bets as state capitalism and the realities of globalization and global capital flows continue to kind of have a dynamic tension. And EB5 has been able to really build a channel out of China and other countries to put that capital to good use. And we'll just skip this slide, but there's a good one that you can chew on later. And just quickly here, I'm sure a lot of you have relationships at local level with folks who are very active in other public interest groups like U.S. Conference of Mayors and National and NACO and others. We have long-standing relationships there as well, and happy to kind of connect the dots as needed. If it's useful to any of you on the line here. In terms of public-private partnerships, we've seen a lot of success in a few different models that are worth checking out, whether it's municipal-owned or state-owned and operated by EB5 professionals, et cetera. The examples are easy for us to just flip on over to you, so any questions that you send on into CITO, I'm sure they'll be eager and happy to put us to work, and we're happy to do so. States also often designate targeted employment areas that would qualify for the lower investment levels, and that's one of the core ways that states can inherently be involved in the EB5 program. We have resources on that for you as well. These next couple of slides, I don't want to dwell on too much because I know I'm talking fast as I tend to try and fit a lot of information in. And this really just is a demonstration of the interagency collaboration that thankfully won't be, I doubt will be very new to you generally speaking, but it's interesting to see how something like EB5 touches on so many different issues when it's really at the center of immigration and finance and economic development. So those of you who have been involved in EB5 in the past are probably curious if I'm going to say anything on our pending authorization date, which is April 28th, with the appropriations expiration date for the federal government's own funding. EB5 has been temporarily extended since the end of 2015, after there was a 3-year reauthorization of the program, and it was started in 1992, so it's been around for quite a while, but only come of age in the Great Recession. There are new proposed regulations that were proposed just before the Obama administration left office. The commenting period deadline is today, so right when I get off this call, I think I have some editing to do for our submission, and we'll see where those proposed regulations go for potential reform. In terms of legislation, so Congress needs to reauthorize the program by the 28th. We expect it will be reauthorized as part of the appropriations package. The bigger question is whether it will be a short-term authorization, that is as long as this next funding package, or if there is an opportunity for any sort of a longer-term legislative solution that would be most welcome by an industry that has been fighting through the uncertainty that comes with temporary authorizations along with appropriations packages. Nothing new to this group. Andy, I think I've talked fast and covered all I probably should here before turning it back over to you. I know I may have a slide or two after this, but hopefully the resources are helpful. Thank you so much. Oh, and come to our conference in DC in just a couple of weeks, right when the appropriations package is scheduled to expire. So if nothing else, we'll have the entertainment here in town, and I'm sure you're all interested in where these appropriations pieces come together as well. Thanks again.
Well, thank you, Peter, and that's a great lineup for your national conference. And I want to thank everybody. Thank again all of our guests this afternoon. Now we'll dive into questions. So far, we only have one question in the queue. And again, I want to remind everybody, if you have any questions, feel free to enter them into the GoToWebinar interface to our panelists. Well, with that, I'll start the first question. This one is directed to Mary and David. Comes in from the audience saying, with the President's aggressive trade agenda, especially his focus on bringing jobs back to the U.S., and with the trade agreement, how has this helped or hurt your efforts?
I'll jump right into that one, Andy. Thank you. Great question. Now is definitely an interesting time for trade policy, just from a lot of different perspectives. I will share that Georgia, we have been internationally engaged internationally for more than 4 decades, and so we are staying focused on our jobs and that mission to bring jobs and investment to Georgia. I can definitely say from the perspective of international investment, our project pipelines remain full. We continue to see a lot of interest. We have not seen any kind of shift in the projects that are coming to us, and I think this is also a really great opportunity to remind that in international investment projects and just investment attraction in general, I mean, these are long-term relationships. These are queries and searches that take a good amount of time, and these decisions are not made lightly by foreign investors. So we are incredibly busy. I would say we're maybe as busy as we ever have been from an investment standpoint. And from the trade side, I would say that the current environment and the current discussion, it's actually allowed a great entry point to talk to companies about the importance of staying internationally focused. It's given us an opportunity to go out and continue to wave the flag of export promotion from our state all across the globe. So there's still a lot of discussion to be had, but we see it as a positive, and it hasn't changed our focus over the past several months.
And David, would you like to chime in as well?
Yeah, thanks. David, I would echo essentially all of what Mary just said from the Georgia perspective. We remain very full with business with companies that are checking out the United States for the first time, or perhaps looking to expand on subsidiary operations they already have in the United States. Every transaction is fact specific. There are a myriad of factors that, beyond the broad things like access to the market and export platform that I mentioned with BMW as an example, there are always very fact-specific reasons that folks are interested in the United States, and we're seeing clients ring our bell from across the world. I happen to cover Central Europe internationally, so that's what I'm hearing the most of, but the colleagues that I deal with are hearing from folks in the Middle East, They're hearing folks from China and Taiwan and Japan and Korea, and also from the Western Hemisphere, Canada, Western Hemisphere, Brazil, what have you. And I also would echo what Mary said about companies needing to remain savvy and ready to engage in world markets, whether it's an import, an export, investment opportunity, all the above.
And Peter, I don't want to exclude you if you'd like to.
Well, I appreciate it, but I think they covered all there is for that one.
Just want to make sure I didn't leave you out. Well, that's about all the time we have for today's eCademy webcast. Again, I want to thank all of our guests and everyone who tuned in today. This webinar will be archived in the CSG Knowledge Center, so if you missed any part of it, you can listen again and feel free to send the link to a friend. Be sure to keep an eye on csg.org to find out about future events in the eCademy series, not only on international trade, but all of our policy areas. Again, I'm Andy Corliss with our CSG Washington, D.C. office. Have a good afternoon, everybody.